I don't hear it.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to the 2022 New Jersey International Film Festival Filmmaker Q&A interview series that we're doing. And I'll introduce you to our guest today, who's visiting from Germany. And we're going to be talking about her film, The Afterthought of Life, which is a documentary about Sunset Boulevard, the very famous street in Los Angeles, Hollywood. And we're going to be talking to Svenja Wichmann for the next half hour or so. But before we start talking to her, just wanted to let you know that the film festival will be taking place as a hybrid this summer, and we'll be screening movies on weekends, that's Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, between June 3rd and June 12th. There'll be a number of screenings that are in person with also online. And then there's going to be a series of films that are only available online. And I'll tell you more about that at the very end of the program. But welcome, Svenja. It's nice to meet you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, tell us how you embarked on this project. How did you get started? How did you decide to make a film about this legendary road?
Well, I think it started gradually. I think one of the very first moments, like initial moments, was the moment when I was first in Los Angeles. And at some point, standing on the sidewalk, I realized, oh, I'm on Sunset Boulevard. I had no idea. So this is it. And just this moment, at that point, of course, I didn't know that I was making a film about it, but it really stuck with me because it made me start thinking about all of these differences between like images that we create in our head and all of the glamorous associations that we have with certain names or places, and then the actual reality of the place or the actual reality also of people's lives in those places. So it started to develop from there. And then of course there's a very famous work of Ed Rocher, a photographer who made a work that's named, I think, Every Building on Sunset Strip, where he like took photos of every building on the Sunset Strip
Wow.
from the street. So yeah, there were lots of different like influences and moments that led to start making this film.
Yeah, I also thought of Tom Anderson's wonderful documentary, LA Plays Itself, which I don't know if you've seen, but I'm sure you have. I mean, it's legendary. And of course, Billy Wilder's famous movie, Sunset Boulevard. I teach a course on David Lynch, and I use Mulholland Drive. And of course, Sunset Boulevard's very important there too. And there's all sorts of ramifications in his movie. But I wanted to let our audience know that the image behind me is actually from your movie. And I think it's a very telling image because a lot of the time you think it's a very glamorous place, but it's really filled with, as one of your commentators called, a bunch of bong shops, t-shirts, and tourists, and no famous people, which I think is a great tagline for your film, because it's really, you demystify the space and you paint it in socioeconomic terms as well. Was that something that you thought about before you started working on the film, or is it something that kind of appeared as you started to film?
Well, I had thought about it a little bit beforehand, that I thought about like who's living in the city and how are their experiences, but then it definitely became more like more in-depth thinking about it when I was working on the film while I was in Los Angeles. I was there for 6 months, and just, you know, living there and moving around in the city, I realized also a lot of things about like what neighborhood was poor or how segregated some parts of the city were, and just how different really the experiences of people who live in the same city are.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. I mean, the film is linear, right? It starts from the ocean, and which I didn't know it goes all the way out to the ocean. So that was insightful in itself. And we kind of work our way into the city. So we make our way east. Is that correct? Does
no,
this work that way?
It is not. It is not in the images are not exactly in the order of how they are in the street. It's not. I thought about doing it in the first place, but then I realized no, this is not how I wanted to do it.
No
so
problem.
it's like you kind of like jump between the different parts of it.
Yeah, I wasn't really sure, but it makes perfect sense because as we're watching the film, which starts off with a kind of, we have a Waze voice or like a Google Map voice telling us to turn onto the street, and that's how we depart. But actually your film starts with a quote from Susan Sontag, who's a very famous photo critic, and talks about photos as related to death. I mean, as a kind of stasis in a moment in time. And I thought that was a really great way to kind of embark on your journey. But I think we, in addition to seeing various shots of Sunset Boulevard, which are for the most part long shots, right? Like the image behind me is a very wide shot that you see a lot of things, but the street is what you always see for the most part. And but we hear voices, and if I remember correctly, I wrote down all the voices. You know, if I can check my notes real quick to see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 voices, correct? Is that right? And how did you end up choosing these people? And why do we never see them? Why do they stay kind of invisible in your film?
I mean, choosing them was, I thought about it a little bit. What was very important for me was to have different perspectives and experiences. Like, I was really thinking a lot about the relationship between images and reality. And so I wanted different voices who were talking about their experiences coming from different backgrounds or parts of life, or working experiences and stuff like that. So that is a little bit how I started choosing the people. And then I was thinking about different themes that are there in Los Angeles, like, for example, the glamour part, or like actors and stuff like that. But then also, of course, there's a lot of immigrants from Mexico, for example, or, you know, so I tried to just think of these different perspectives as like roles, like who. Also, I thought about it in like a socioeconomic terms, like who is speaking. And yeah, so I ended up meeting the people in different ways. Like, one person I met on the street while I was filming and started talking, and then some people I knew through friends. One is the mother of a friend of mine, so it's just, it came like in different ways.
But how long did it come to get the film put together? I mean, you said you were in LA for 6 months. What were you doing there for that amount of time? Were you studying, working there, or?
Well, I was basically researching and trying to figure out how I wanted to make the film. Like, just also, I mean, there's also the slow motion parts in the film where I just like that I filmed from the car driving along the street, and just figuring out how that works and how I wanted to do this. I did all of this myself, and it's like the first film that I made. I studied media arts and fine arts, and so I didn't have a team or something. I was like the director and the producer and the camera person. So I just, that was one part of it. But then also I really needed to get a little bit of a feeling for the city. And that was also relating to the socioeconomic things that I was learning at the time also, and like reading a lot about racism and like a lot of socioeconomic terms, and to just get a better understanding of how this plays out in the city. I was also thinking a lot about who am I coming from Europe to this city, now trying to make this kind of film here. Like, maybe somebody who always lived there or grew up there would be better to make this kind of film. So these were all kinds of questions. And then coming from that, I was also starting to think, I had this idea of just having the voices of people early on, but then I had to kind of like re-examine this thought, like, why would I want it like this? And my whole like reading about socioeconomic things and politics and stuff really kind of like confirmed this for me, because I was like, I don't want you to see the person, I want people to listen to what they have to say. I feel like it was my try to really, I think there's a different way of listening when you're not seeing the person and you don't immediately have a certain image or
Yeah,
like
I mean,
understanding.
it makes perfect sense because I think this way, in a way, you mentioned that in some of the, um, in some of the, in your in the introductory quote from Susan Sontag, and then you get that from some of the voiceover from, I guess, an art student or somebody who was obviously very well versed in postmodernist criticism, who talks about absence, and absence is a thing that reveals more in some instances than presence. And
Mhm.
you know, I really like that. I think I did see you. There's one cameo of you shooting the film. Is that true? There's a shot of a person doing a video, and I didn't know if
Yes.
it was somebody else shooting you.
Yeah,
And
that was me. I felt like it was kind of necessary. I was thinking a lot about how the whole medium of film. I was more or less coming from photography. That's also why I put the photography quote of Susan
yeah,
Sontag in the beginning,
mm,
because I was really thinking a lot about this relationship of how this medium plays out and what it does to us. Also, throughout editing the film, I was really thinking a lot about what does this medium do and how does it work and how much power and control does it give me also as the filmmaker
yeah.
to put things a certain way. And that's why I felt like I needed to include like this one
It's wonderful.
in
It's like a Hitchcock moment. I liked it. It's very wonderful. I figured it was you, but I wanted to make sure. But this film was shot pre-COVID, right?
exactly,
And then
yes.
you edited it during the pandemic. I wondered how long the process took, though, from inception to completion. How many years did it take?
Quite a long time.
Really?
I mean, I was in Los Angeles for the first half of 2019.
Hmm.
So that was when the film was shot, and then afterwards I started editing it, and it took quite some time for several reasons. At some point, the pandemic started, and then since I was still, this film is also my diploma in the media studies I did in Cologne. So then, because of the pandemic, the university was closed. I couldn't go there to edit.
Edit. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that kind of extended work on the film. And then on top of that, in 2020, I got also sick. I got diagnosed with
Oh,
cancer at
oh
some
my
point. So I
God.
first had to deal with that. And then luckily I'm fine now and I survived everything. But it just took a long time. But I'm also kind of happy about how long it took, even though sometimes of course I felt like, oh my god, this is never going to be finished. But I feel like it's in some ways also very good and necessary to have a little bit of distance and to not be too quick. I think it would have been a very different film if I had finished it like immediately.
Hmm. I mean, as a fellow filmmaker, I always tell my students, you know, they have this program at the universities here called Campus Movie Fest, where the kids are given a camera for a weekend. They have to make a film and then turn it in by the Sunday. And they've only had 48 hours to make the movie. And I say, I was so against that. But then one of the students who won told me, Al, I don't take 2 days to make the film. As soon as Campus Movie Fest is over, I start making my film. So he had a whole year to make the
Ah.
film, and the delivery was just in the last few days. But most of it was shot prior to that, and that's what he submitted. And of course, those are the films that always win because they've been digested over a long period of time. So I think the same thing goes with your movie. And by the way, there's a film we're showing that I think you will enjoy called the, oh gosh, see if I can remember the title. It's our opener. I'm just swimming in films the last few days because we're already watching movies for our next festival. And
Oh.
I swim in so many titles. It's called The Art of Unwar, and it's by an artist named Krzysztof Wojciechko, who's a Polish artist who lives in the US, and he does projections onto statues and other things. And it's really an amazing film. And if you'd like to see it, let me know. And then it took 10 years to make that film. So, you know, some films take forever to finish, but it's not a bad thing. If you know the film is ready, then it's ready. I also like this, you can't trust your eyes anymore, which was a nice comment during one of the scenes where we're outside of the Pinchas Tacos restaurant.
Mhm.
And I think that was a really telling thing too, because as I'm watching your film, I'm struck by how, you know, mundane the street is. I mean, from check cashing places to like 99-cent stores like the image behind me. And, you know, that in many ways is a lot like what America's like today, a series of strip malls and boarded up buildings. And then at the very end of your film, everything shifts and we get to the ritzy area of the street, which obviously is much far removed from everything else. And so I like the way that you broke the film up into these types of parts. And was that something also that was you know, something you were conscious of doing from the beginning, or did it manifest itself as you moved forward?
Yeah, I think it manifested more during working on it, and it also I thought more about what was being said with what image,
Yeah,
and so with some things that are being said, it's just like the pairing of it, that it needed to be like in this rich area. And yeah, I thought a lot about also the mundanity, and I think this is part of why I made the film also, because this is really this dissonance that I was feeling between what is actually there, what you see and experience when you're on the street, but then there's a lot of like glamorous expectation that is kind of like projected onto it
yeah,
from
yeah.
afar, but it is rarely there, or it is also often, like as you can see in those rich areas, hiding behind something. It
Big
is kind
hedges,
of like
yeah, gates and
so yeah, the and the looking and seeing quote is from Theo. He's also a media artist who works a lot with like the like digital and reality, like virtual reality and stuff like this. So he was really
he was
um,
tuned into that aspect.
mhm.
But that's the other thing, the editing style of your film was interesting in its own right because of seeing, not seeing. We start off in the darkness in your film, and we see this text of the Susan Sontag quote, and then we go to black, and we hear first, and then we see. And then as we morph from one sequence to the next, we sometimes go to white and then come back into image or to black. And I like those transitions because they were not, you know, as smooth as I think people might want, but they're not meant to jar either. I think they're made to kind of create almost a quilt, right? Where you're kind of creating this collage and where things kind of come together orally or imagistically, and you rotate from those strategies as you move through the film. Is that something also that you really found you wanted to do? And am I wrong in reading it that way? Or
No, I mean, it was, I think you're right. It was also, this was coming also from thinking about reality and the medium itself. I kind of wanted to have these little breaks in between
yeah,
for one, because they're reminding you that you're actually watching a movie or an image that is not actually there.
yeah,
If they weren't there, it would be more giving the impression of like, oh, you're in the place and you know what the situation is, and actually you get the impression that you do, but you don't.
right.
Like, you know, it's already gone. It's just an image or a projection again. So I wanted to have these little breaks for that. And then again, it's also this aspect of um, listening to what somebody's saying, which is
Mm.
works differently in my opinion when you don't have an image, when you're really just listening, and then you have the image that gives you like another information
Yeah,
again.
yeah. I like that. I like that very much. And I think as I was watching your film, I watched it a couple of times. The first time I was trying to piece together to see if voices were repeated, because the first time I watched it, I got the sense it was a variety of different voices, but then it became clear, like we're listening to the actress, and I recognized her voice, so I knew that that was not the case. So I think the first time you watch this film, you kind of have to get your bearings. And it's like trying to navigate the street, trying to find your way. And you map your way into your movie by recognizing the voices that you kind of quilt together. And then, then you have the images. So that's why I thought the film is so complex, because you need to navigate not only the visual, but the oral. And then the breaks definitely help. I mean, like the smartphone shots where you physically see the ground, like the sidewalk. It gives you a different perspective on the road as well. And I thought that that was very nice and helped, kind of break up the bombardment of information that you're getting. That you can kind of rest for a moment and then pick up again once you move out of that kind of interlude, right? It's an interlude for me. All
Yeah,
right.
I mean, this is also, again, in my opinion, about the different perspectives, because I realized there's different ways of looking at your environment. Like most of the time you're looking at your environment from the car.
Right.
And then when you walk on the sidewalk, it's a very different perspective. And again, these perspectives are also related to socioeconomic positionings of people.
Right.
Like usually people who do not have a lot of money walk on the sidewalk and the others drive in their cars. So, and that impacts also a lot about the perception of reality, I guess.
I wonder if you had any shots that you shot on a bus or something other than in a car. I mean, if you were taking, because there's shots of public transportation, but I don't see any in your movie. Was that something that was not practical? Because my question is, was there any interference when you were shooting on the street? Did people bother you? Or, I mean, as a filmmaker, I remember somebody threw a stone at me once from a bus as I was shooting on a bridge, and I'll never forget that. And I realized, I'm exposed out here. Did you have any of that while you were in the process of making the film?
Not really. Some people stopped and they started talking to me, but rarely about like complaining or what are you doing here or why. Like mostly it was people. Oftentimes they weren't even that interested in what I was shooting. They just wanted to talk to someone. I mean, it was really just this one person who I then ended up also interviewing, who I met on the sidewalk because I was filming in front of their workshop, and they wanted to know what I was doing there. But other than that, I think people are so used to having cameras around that nobody really cares anymore.
But you talk about the place being dangerous in areas. And did you ever feel like you were in danger when you were shooting?
Well, I was not shooting in the dangerous area.
I see.
That's also one thing I realized while I was working on the film in Los Angeles, that before I had thought Sunset Boulevard runs through different neighborhoods.
Right.
And then while I was working there, I was realizing, yes, that's true, but still it runs mostly, like, I guess all of it runs through mostly white neighborhoods. And like, for example, neighborhoods like you have in South Central, or it's really a different thing. And I think maybe there people would have also been more critical of me, why I would be there and why I would be filming there. But Sunset Boulevard is not that area. So then that also led me to try to include people from other parts of the city.
That's what one of your voiceovers says, that, if you're not from around here, then they try to get you out. So that's why I asked that question. Well, all of this is very insightful. What I'd like to do now is, like, if I can set this up so that we can share screen and I can give our viewers a chance to see how they can buy tickets. I'm going to share the screen now, and hopefully you can see that. And then move it so you don't just see all my desktop. And this is our homepage, which is njfilmfest.com. And when you get to njfilmfest.com, normally everything would be here. You would click on current events and then the whole schedule open. But because we are doing the film festival as a hybrid, we've located the main website for the festival at Eventive, which is the streaming provider. And so when you get to this page, which tells you welcome, you just click on the buy tickets part, and that'll bounce you to our Eventive site that has a welcome page, and then it tells you basic information about how much it is. And you could click the link where it says buy tickets here, or you could click it here. And if you click on tickets, then we will get all sorts of all of the screenings will pop up. Here we go. And then we have all sorts of ways to find your film. It's under experimental because it's certainly experimental. It's under short because there's a short film playing with yours, which is called Composition, which is a nice film too. It's also under narrative feature because I think of your film not exclusively as a documentary, but it certainly is under documentary too. And so when you get to this page, you can see another shot from Sunset Boulevard, which is an image from your film. You just click on pre-order. You want to give it as a gift to somebody, you click on give a gift. They will ask you to log in and create an account for you, but it takes 5 seconds to do that. And all you do is you hit the pre-order button and you can buy tickets to this screening. Individual screenings are $15, which I know is a little on the pricey side, but we got battered from COVID. So we're trying to make up the shortfall because of the difficulties of COVID. It's not much different than going to see a movie at night in a movie theater. And we think our movies are better than most of what's in the multiplex. So you can check out these two great films on that day. And the wonderful thing is that it's available for 24 hours and it will be taking place on June 12th, starting at midnight. And you can start watching right away. And then you have 24 hours to finish watching the movie. And I believe you can watch it several times if you choose to do that. And then let's say you start watching it at 5 in the afternoon on the 12th. You still have 24 hours to finish watching it. So it's a really great deal. And if you want to get more information about all the films, you can click the film guide, which has all the posters and information about the movies individually. And then you can also go up here to schedule, which has a linear version of the schedule, and you can see big pictures and big description for people who have difficulty reading small text. We work our way all the way down to the bottom because your film is playing on the last day of our festival, which is the 12th. And then voila, this is the image that I have behind me, which is Svenja's wonderful film. So you can get more information that way too. So I'm going to stop sharing. And you can also buy a festival pass for $100. You get to see everything, and it's like half off. So we have a number of people who do that. They watch everything, and they will send comments and things like that. And I always steer them to the filmmaker whenever they can't get access to the filmmaker. But this interview is kind of to help. Perhaps some of the questions I asked were similar ones to them. And so anyway, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. It was wonderful meeting you and talking to you. And I can't believe this is your first film. It's like a film that was made by a veteran, somebody who's been making films for years. So I look forward to seeing your subsequent films. Make sure you always send everything that you do to us. And
thank you so much
for joining us. Thank you. Thank you. All right, let's just stop recording.